This is season 1, episode 2. Hit play. Hello and welcome to the second episode of the System podcast. The Equine System is all about training horses and being the best leader that you can be for your horse. Last episode, we worked on a couple of exercises that developed our role as the leader with our horse. Today, we're going to build on those exercises and see if we can increase our softness, increase our awareness, and increase our connection with our equine friends. Last episode, we spoke a lot about the 3 principles that we use to train our horses. There are only 3 principles. Yes, they are simple principles, but doesn't necessarily make them easy. The whole purpose of this journey is to improve how we apply those principles to every aspect of living and working with our horses. So principle 1 is move the horse's feet. Now, horses decide who's the leader by who moves whose feet. So if our pony can move our feet, guess who's the leader? If I can move your feet, guess who's the leader? But if you can move all of our feet, I will follow you, my friend, to the end of the world because you are our leader. Principle 2 is all about how we move those feet. A language of cues is what we intend to achieve, and we build that language one cue at a time using the simple principle of pressure and release. Remember, it's not when we put the pressure on that's important, it's when we release the pressure that the horse learns. The third principle we don't use straight away when we're starting out, but it's something I want you to keep in your mind all the time, because the third principle is mistakes and opposites. And what it does is it allows us and our horses to make mistakes before we correct them by doing the opposite. It just means that we all are allowed to make mistakes, and mistakes are positive. So without further ado, let's recap on the exercises that we did last week and work on some new ones. There are a few assumptions that we're working with today, and that is you have a horse, you have a motivator. I've got a bridle on my horse today, but you can do all of these exercises in a halter. And we're also assuming that you have a safe place to work. So if you're working up against a barbed wire fence or in an unsafe environment, we wouldn't advise that. We'd advise some place that you have some walls and it's not too slippery and not too wet, not too dry and not too hot. Now, the first exercise we worked on last time was simple head down cue. I hope that you've been practicing that, and I hope that you've been adding it to everything that you do with your horse. Maybe when you catch it, when you bridle it, when you saddle it. A head down cue is an important cue that I use all the time because it does affect our horse's emotional state. Let's pick up on our inside rein or our left rein in our left hand. We're going to gently direct that rein towards the ground with the smallest amount of pressure. Anytime your horse looks to the ground or even blinks or lowers its eyelashes, we're going to reward that horse with release. Now, this exercise isn't about getting to the ground, but I would think within a few sessions, or even this week when you've been practicing, you should be able to get your horse pretty low to the ground. So let's do that together. Let's add a few of those cues together. So head down. If the horse lowers her eyelashes a little, release. It's okay if she puts her head up again, but we're just not going to release the pressure until she's 1% lower. Good. Give your horse a rub and a pat with your motivator. Remember that violin pat that we did last week where we play the violin on our horse's neck? Beautiful. We should be able to play the violin on our horse's head and neck, their shoulders, their ribs, and their hinds. Now, anything we do to one side of our horse, we have to do to the other. So we're going to walk around to the other side. We're going to pick up our right rein this time in our right hand. We're going to gently direct the horse's nose towards the ground. Now, it doesn't matter if your horse walks forwards or walks backwards. We're going to do the opposite to whatever they've done, and then we will resume the exercise. Hopefully you've been practicing this one a little bit this week, and your horse is getting softer and softer to that head down cue. Really good, really good. The second cue that we worked on last time was a backup cue. And the backup cue is when we direct the rein towards the horse's shoulder and lift our energy. So there's two components that the horse has to understand in order to achieve a really soft backup. So let's work on that one together. We're going to stand in front of our horse, 2 eyes to 2 eyes. We're going to hold on to our right rein in our right hand, and we're going to gently direct the rein towards the horse's shoulder. Now the horse shouldn't move until we take a breath in, step with one foot towards our horse, and lift our energy. I call this crowding the horse. The moment the horse leans or takes one step back, I want you to immediately release the cue and release all pressure. Now, if your horse didn't step back, that's okay. That's why we have a motivator. If your horse doesn't respond to that soft cue, we're going to place the motivator between us and the horse, tap the ground, tap the air, tap the horse. Hopefully, your horse is a little bit softer than last week. Remember, we're aiming for 1% better every time we work with our horse or every time we ask the question. This time, we're going to do those 5 steps back. So we're going to direct the rein backwards, lift our energy, motivate only if necessary. Good. We don't want our motivator to become the cue. So it's really important that we always give a soft cue before we introduce a motivator. If your horse did your 5 steps backwards gently, I want you to play the violin on their head and neck and remind them that the motivator does not give any cues. It only provides energy to our cues. Therefore, if we don't have a cue, you don't need to respond to the motivator. We call this desensitizing the motivator. All right, guys, anything we do to one side of our horse, we need to do to the other. So walk around to the left side of your horse, pick up the left rein in your left hand, and we're going to direct our horse back 5 steps. Cue, lift your energy, motivate only if necessary. Now, if you're starting to get some fluidity with this cue, you might be able to add them together. But when you're first starting out, it's okay if your horse takes 1 step and then they get a pat and a rub with the stick. 1 step, pat and desensitize with the motivator. Another step, pat and desensitize with the motivator. Remember, the more release the horse gets, the more it will recognize that it's done the right thing. The next exercise we did last week was a head down and back up, and we added those 2 together. So let's see if we can add 2 cues together this week. Head down, lift your energy, direct the rein into a backup. Good. You can do 5 steps, but if the last step that you do is hard or there's a bit of resistance, there's no reason to say you can't add 2 or 3 more steps until the horse gives you 1 soft back up step. Remember, this is an endless road to improvement. You can always add on what you've done. You can always improve by 1%. How's your back up looking? Is your back up feeling soft? Is your back up connecting your feet to your horse's feet? Are you breathing in and lifting your horse into the back up? Or are you pushing harder and harder on the bit to get a response? Remember, 1% improvement doesn't necessarily have to be that the horse improves by 1%. It could be that you think about giving the softer cue than you did last time, or you find a way to lift your ribs into a back up, or lift your horse's feet into a back up. Now, there are two ways we can move our horse. Just then, you stepped towards your horse, you crowded her, and she moved into the empty, open space behind her. This time, we're going to pretend to step backwards and create some space for our horse to move forward into. So holding the rein in the riding position, your left hand on your left rein, I want you to have a look at the bit. Without pulling the bit forward, I want you to create some space by pretending to step back with one foot. Did your horse come with you? Or did it wait? Now, if your horse matched your energy and stepped forward one step, perfect. But if it didn't, you may need to bring your motivator out to the side, tap the ground, tap the air, and gently tap the horse until she follows the energy in your body. Let's try that one again. We're going to pick up on our inside left hand and our left rein, create a little bit of space by pretending to step, and motivate only if necessary. Now, what I used to find is I'd take one step and my horses would take 4 or 5. That's okay, they're allowed to make mistakes. We just correct them by doing the opposite. Allow your horse to take 2 or 3 steps forward, and then use that backup cue that you've just taught them so well to back up the same amount of steps. All right, let's go again. Left hand on our left rein, create some space, lift our energy, and see if we can get our horse to step forward 1 step. That means only one of their feet should move. If your horse did a good job, you're allowed to give them a violin pat. And then I want you to see if you can step forward 5 steps, 1 step at a time. Create some space, lift your energy, and step. Create some space, lift your energy, and step. Create some space, lift your energy, and step. Is your horse starting to follow your energy, or does it wait for the motivator? Perhaps it pushes forward and anticipates 3 or 4 extra steps. These are all things that I don't expect you to master in this session, in this podcast. But I do expect that within a few days or a few weeks or a few practices, you can start to connect your horse's energy to your energy. Do you know what I'm going to say next? Anything we do to one side of our horse, we need to do to the other. So walk around to the other side, right hand on our right rein. We're going to practice that lead forward cue again. We're going to start with 1 step. Can I step with 1 foot back, create some space for my horse to come forward into, and get 1 step off my energy? If our horse makes the mistake of taking a couple extra, that's okay. They're doing a good job. They're trying to find the answers. Just press back and turn it into a backup until you have 1 step. Give your horse a violin pat and tell them they've done a good job. And then I want you to do the same exercise where we can see if we can walk forward 5 steps and bring our horse forward 5 steps in time with our feet. Make sure you check in with the bit. Are you using a pull forward on your bridle as the cue? Or are you having a steady contact and lifting your energy and allowing your horse to follow the energy in your body? I don't expect this to be perfect today, but I do expect that in a couple of lessons you should be able to breathe in and your horse follow your cue. Last lesson, we also worked on an exercise called a quarter clock stop, which was an exercise that I borrowed from my mentor, Steve Brady. But I've since added a few things that I really enjoy teaching all of my clients and all of my horses. So today, let's pick up where we left off, and we're going to start by drawing a circle around our feet. This exercise is really awesome because it uses all 4 parts of the horse. And if you were to get $1 for every time you move your horse's feet and your horse didn't move your feet, this exercise would start to add coins to your leadership bank quite quickly. All right, so you've got your circle around your feet. Let's draw in a 12. You're standing 2 eyes to your horse. You're going to draw in a 12 o'clock mark. And then I want you to look to your left and draw in a 9 o'clock mark. Where do you think a 9 would be on a clock? Perfect. We're holding on to our left hand with our left rein. And we're going to direct all 4 parts of our horse from 12 to 9. We're going to start with the horse's head and neck, look at their shoulder, bend their ribs, and move their hinds. Now, if you've already done that, perfect. If you haven't quite done it yet, because I didn't tell you to lift your energy and do it, that's also fine too. We can do it together. You've got your 2 marks. You're facing your horse, 2 eyes to 2 eyes. We're going to look at our nose and lift our energy. Look at our shoulder. Our front legs will cross over as they step out towards the 9 o'clock mark. Our ribs should move towards the 9 o'clock mark. And if you look down your horse towards your horse's flank and hind leg, you should be able to almost push your horse's hindquarter over with your eyes and energy. Now, a lot of the time, horses interpret this as a lunging exercise. They start to go fast around the circle, or they start to pull back away from the circle. That's okay. They're allowed to make mistakes, and you have a way of moving them forwards and you have a way of moving them backwards already. So if they've pulled back away from the circle, that's okay. Bring them forward again to your clock. If they've pushed forwards around your clock, that's okay. Back them up, redraw your circle, and start your quarter clock exercise again. Hopefully we're standing 2 eyes to 2 eyes and we've got our left hand on our left rein. We're going to do this one more time. We're going to start by directing our nose towards 9, our shoulder towards 9, our ribs towards 9. And when we want the horse to stop, we're going to look at their tail and lift our energy. If you lift your energy and the horse's hind leg doesn't line up with the mark, you can step out of your clock with 1 foot. Look at the horse's tail and motivate until the horse moves the inside hind across, just 1 step. If your horse did a good job and it stopped at 9 o'clock, that's good too. You get to give them a violin pat on all 4 parts of their body. Now, do you know what I'm going to say next? Anything we do to one side of our horse, we have to do to the other. So holding on to your right rein this time with your right hand, we're going to draw a 12 o'clock mark and we're going to draw a 3 o'clock mark. And then we're going to take a breath in and move all 4 parts of our horse from 12 to 3. If your horse doesn't go, you may need to motivate. But if your horse moved beautifully, remember to give them a pat on all 4 parts of their body with your motivator. Don't underestimate the violin pat. Your horse is going to grow to love to be patted with your motivator everywhere they have hair. All right, now you guys are getting pretty good at doing a quarter of a clock, but we're going to add on this today. So this time, tune in to me here, we're going to draw a 12 o'clock and we're going to draw a 6 o'clock, which should be directly behind you if you're standing two eyes to your horse. Your toes are still going to finish at the quarter clock mark, but our horse is going to finish at the 6. All right, let's direct our horse's nose around to the 6, their shoulders around to the 6, and their ribs. But be careful not to push their hindquarter around until their nose reaches the mark. If you did that exercise correctly, your toes should still be facing 3. Or is that 9? It's 3. And your horse should be standing at 6. If your horse did a good job and moved off your energy and breath, perhaps you want to give them a pat with the motivator. A rub and pat. Remember to play the violin. The noise is already getting better in my mind. You guys are becoming pro violinists. All right, back in your circle, guys, back in your clock. We're standing two eyes to two eyes. I want you to draw in another 12. And I want you to draw in this time a 9. Which will mean you have 3/4 of a clock that you have to get your horse around before you disengage the back legs to stop. We're still going to start the same way. You are allowed to move your toes a little bit, but I want your toes to finish facing 6, and I want your horse to finish at number 9. All right, let's start with the head and neck. We're going to look at our horse's eye, take a breath in, look at the shoulders, turn our toes a little bit, keep turning our toes, looking at the ribs, park our toes at the 6 o'clock mark, and move our horse around to that 9 o'clock mark. Now, if you've done heaps and heaps and heaps of quarter clocks and your horse has started guessing, changing it up all the time will mean that they keep listening to you rather than just learning the exercise. If your horse followed the feel on your bit just then, make sure you give them a violin pat on all 4 parts. We don't want our motivator to become a cue to move. Our motivator only adds energy to our cues. All right, one more of those. We're going to stand in the middle of our clock. Good, we're going to draw in a 12 o'clock mark. And we're going to draw in a 9, which means you've got another 3/4 clock to achieve together. All right, lift your energy, start with the head and neck, look at the inside shoulder, get that foot to step around. You're allowed to adjust your feet a little bit within the clock, but I would expect that by doing this a few more times, we start to get to the point where we can stay inside our clock fairly stationary and have our horse walk around us and stop accurately at the 9 o'clock mark. All right, anything we do to one side of our horse, we're going to do to the other. So we're going to swap back to the left-hand side with our left rein on the left hand. We're going to stand in the middle of our clock, facing two eyes to two eyes. We're going to draw in a 12. And this time we're going to draw in a 3. Now, even though we've drawn in the 3, we're still going to go the whole way around the clock backwards to 3. So we're going to lead the nose past 9, the nose past 6 before we get to 3. Good, so start with the nose, move the shoulder, crowd the hinds a little, only when the nose gets to the 3 o'clock mark. If your horse is doing this correctly, it should have a beautiful inside bend as it walks around the clock. It should be soft in your hand and it should be staying on the outside of your clock. A lot of horses have the temptation to push into us and get their nose into our chest. If that's the case, just start to finish every clock with a bit of a backup. And that way you'll be doing the opposite to when a horse pushes forwards. Remember, it's not about getting this exercise perfect today, but it is about looking to improve the exercise by 1% every time we ask the question. Make sure you work on this one before our next lesson because things are going to get trickier. Next step, we're going to introduce the wall today. Now, if you don't have a solid wall in your arena and you're trying to use a fence for this exercise, make sure it's not an electric fence or a barbed wire fence or something really unsafe that I'm going to get 1,000 comments on being like, Lara, you put my horse through a fence. Make sure you have a safe space to work in. Today we're using the indoor arena walls, but it doesn't really matter what object you use. We treat walls and objects exactly the same. We teach the horse the cues that we need to use around the objects, away from the objects. And then we test our cues at the wall or the float or the object. So I want you to lead your horse over to any wall, any safe wall that you can work with, and I want you to put your back against the wall. For this exercise, we're going to draw a half circle around our feet. So your back's against the wall and you're almost drawing a rainbow around in front of you, is what I explain to a lot of the kids that we do this with. We're going to put our left hand on our left rein, and we're going to do that quarter clock exercise that you just practiced away from the wall. So you're going to draw in a 12 o'clock at your toes, good, and a 9 o'clock to your left. And then we're going to move all 4 parts of our horse from 12 to 9, starting with their head and neck. So we're going to direct the horse's nose towards the wall, direct the horse's shoulder towards the wall, and direct the horse's hinds towards the wall. Now, if your horse is even standing a little bit close to that wall, you are not allowed to hit the horse with the motivator. Because as far as she's concerned, she just stepped towards the wall. The last thing we want her to think is that when she steps towards the wall, the float, or the object, you're going to hit her with a stick. So if your horse even attempted to move to the left in any way, shape, or form, you're going to give them a rub and a pat on all 4 parts of their body, their head and neck, their shoulders, their rib cage, and their hinds. The beauty of this exercise is we can do it again and again and again. And we can improve the exercise by 1%, and hopefully, eventually, when our horse understands the cue, they'll stand perfectly quietly next to the wall. All right, we're going to pick up our wall side rein in our right hand. And this time, we're going to do half a clock, just like we did away from the wall. So your horse is lined up with one wall now, and they're going to be completely flipped over to the other side, lined up on the other side of the wall. So I want you to draw in at 12 o'clock. You're standing there facing your horse, 2 eyes to 2 eyes. And I want you to draw in your 6 o'clock. Parallel to the wall. And then we're going to lead all 4 parts of our horse from 12 to 6, starting with the horse's head and neck. So lead the nose, crowd the shoulder, bend the ribs, and when the horse's nose reaches 6, look at the hinds and move the hinds 1 or 2 steps towards the wall. Now, if your horse has done this a few times, and you think that you want to ask the hindquarter to step a little bit closer to the wall, you can stand with your back against the wall and step out with your left foot. Look at your horse's tail, motivate the ground, motivate the air, until your horse steps 1 step away from your cue. Really important that if you've only done this a few times, that you do not hit the horse with the motivator when they think they're standing next to the object. I cannot stress that enough. All right, how's your circle looking? Is your horse's nose inside your circle? Do you need to back your horse up 1 or 2 steps to make sure they're an arm's length from your body? Make sure you've still got a clear rainbow around your feet. You may need to draw it again, or use your imagination if you're on grass or turf or something else. But if you've got sand, it makes it easy. All right, then we can pick up our left rein in our left hand. We're going to draw in a 12 o'clock and draw in a 6 o'clock. Should be directly behind you. Then we're going to lead all 4 parts of our horse, starting with the head and neck, around to the other side. The head and neck, the shoulders, the ribs, and the hinds. How's your pony going? Are they getting closer to the wall? Are they getting softer to the cue? Remember, it's not actually about the wall. If your horse understands how to quarter clock beautifully away from the wall, then your horse should be able to understand how to quarter clock next to the wall. All right, we're only going to do this one more time. I want you to pick up your wall side rein in your right hand. Direct your horse's nose around to the other wall, its shoulders round to the other wall, its ribs around to the other wall. But remember not to look at its hindquarter until you want to disengage and stop the horse at the mark. If you look at its hinds too early, it'll stop halfway around that circle. Which brings us to our next exercise. This exercise is about adding 2 cues together. So I want you to put your back against the wall. And I want you to draw in a 12 o'clock mark in front of you. Good. And a 3 o'clock mark in front of your horse. All right. Now I want you to turn to your horse and pick up your wall side rein. This time we're only going to do a quarter clock. But as soon as we get to the quarter clock mark, we're going to turn it into a backup. So we're going to direct our horse's nose to that 12 o'clock mark, our shoulders to the 12 o'clock mark, our ribs, and our hindquarter. The moment that your horse's nose gets there, I want you to back your horse up away from the wall or away from the object. If your horse backs softly, give it release and hopefully a violin pat. If your horse backs softly, give it release and hopefully a violin pat. If you need to work on your backup and you need to motivate until you get a soft step, that's okay too. So long as you release when your horse is 1% better than the last time you asked. There's only one extra exercise that we're going to work on today, and that is the horse's head and neck bend and flex. Now we worked on that last time, so it shouldn't be too new to anybody. But what it requires is for the horse's head and neck to bend and flex, but the rest of its body and feet to stay still. So for this exercise, I want you to walk around to the horse's girth. I want you to hold your inside or your left rein in your left hand. And I want you to gently, holding onto your horse's wither and your hand halfway down the rein, I want you to gently bend your horse's head towards the girth. Now the horse's head doesn't have to come all the way to the girth, but I would expect after a couple of exercises or a few practices that you could start to get your horse's head halfway to the girth within a few sessions. If your horse is soft and gentle, you can release the bend. If your horse is heavy and pulling, you might hold the rein a little bit longer until the horse looks to you, or until the horse stops twisting at his pole, or until the horse is 1% better in some way, shape or form. Always look to reward a 1% rather than focusing on all of the things that the horse is not quite getting right. Good. Now anything we do to one side of our horse, we're going to do to the other. So I want you to walk around to the other side, pick up your right rein in your right hand, and holding your rein halfway down the rein, I want you to ask the horse to flex their nose around towards the girth. Now remember, she doesn't have to come all the way, but if you can look at her ears and they be a little bit horizontal, as in she's not twisting her nose up to the roof, she's not biting your hand, she's not spinning in circles, but her ears are level, that might be the 1% that you're looking for. Now, you cannot overdo this exercise. All you will do is make a horse soft and supple through their head and neck. I want you to ask as soft and as simple, as soft and gently as possible. We're going to finish by patting all 4 parts of our horse. We're going to play the violin everywhere they've got hair. They have been absolute superstars today. Thank you very much for joining us. If you do need some more help with these exercises, we do them all on YouTube. They're all on our YouTube channel. If you need some help with some written explanations or diagrams and books, that's all on equinedevelopment.com.au. If you need help from us, we'll see you there. Otherwise, we'll catch you on the pod next week.